Ladies and gentlemen, it is your friend, Mike Brady, and today I thought we'd do something a little bit different. This may surprise you to know, but the internet is full of a lot of bad misinformation. Shocking, I know. This is especially true when it comes to the Titanic. For some reason, this ship has just created a huge mess when it comes to believable information online. There's a ton of rubbish, absolute bin juice quality articles on the internet talking about the Titanic disaster. I thought today we could have a little bit of fun with one. This is called Newly Discovered Titanic Photos Offer Clues to Why It Sank So Quickly by the renowned website History 101. You can tell they're proud of this one because no author's name is attributed to the article. So we're already off to a good start. Divvied up into sections, here we go. Number 1, Queen of the Ocean. There was nothing quite like the RMS Titanic, the first supercruise liner. That's a word that just doesn't exist. The world's first supercruise liner. It's like talking about an F1 car and being like, the world's first super quick, fast, zoomy, four-wheeled vehicle. Titanic wasn't the first anything, really. I mean, the term superliner had been used for ships going back to the 19th century. The Kaiser Wilhelm de Grosse and some other ones. Titanic wasn't really the first of anything. Besides, we know she had a sister ship that was a little bit older, the Olympic, that kind of did everything before Titanic. But I don't really know where they got the term supercruise liner from. I like it though. It's groovy. The first supercruise liner, the Titanic was dubbed Queen of the Ocean. It was said to be one of the wonders of the world. It's safe to say that the Titanic was a big deal. In fact, it was so big that a new shipyard had to be built just so they could build her. The site became the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast and took up an equivalent of 4 city blocks. It's not really true. Harland and Wolff had existed on that site for many, many years. They actually just cleared out a few of their old slipways and combined them into 2 big ones to build the Olympic and the Titanic on. It's not like Harland and Wolff just kind of like set up shop for the first time in 1911 and said, hey, this is us now. Building ships at such a multitude. Building ships at such a multitude?
What?
2? Is that a multitude? Building ships at such a multitude. This gives my brain a bit of a bit of a problem. Building ships at such a multitude were not just risky, but pricey. Number 2, White Star versus Cunard. White Star Line chairman and managing director J. Bruce Ismay. Here we go. This poor guy gets pulled into everything, and his whole reputation's been ruined. Bruce Ismay was under tremendous pressure to turn the company around. The White Star Line was struggling to compete with its competitors and were trying to keep their heads above water as they placed their bets in the transatlantic shipping wars. The competition was brutal. Yeah, the competition was brutal, but the White Star Line was doing a really good job. They had the big 4, including the Adriatic, the Celtic, the Baltic, and the 4th one, whose name I always forget. The Seadric. The Seadric? I think it was the Seadric. Anyway, the big 4. They were pretty, revolutionary for their time, They weren't that fast, but they were pretty big and luxurious. And the White Star Line was doing really well. It was doing so well, in fact, they had enough money to bankroll the construction of 2 massive super cruise liners, the Titanic and the Olympic. So it's not like they were struggling financially. Main rivals such as Cunard Line boasted and advertised how their ships were the fastest and most luxuriant ocean liner services in the world. Ismay seethed. They always make him out to be like this moustache twirling, I'll get you, Cunard Line. Though Cunard Line had speed, White Star Line was going for size and opulence, and Ismay's ideas were gargantuan. However, there were also drawbacks. Yeah, it's true. White Star Line's main, point of difference was their size and their luxury. That was their corner of the market. Number 3, cutting corners. Well, here we go. I can tell this is where we're going downhill. Chief designer Thomas Andrews oversaw the construction and design of the RMS Titanic. Yes, kind of, but not really. I'll get back to that in a second. As he rolled out his plans for a luxurious cruise liner, they're 2 different... You can be a cruise ship or you can be an ocean liner. They're 2 different things. It's like being the world's biggest bus limousine. Well, it's yeah, they're similar, but a bus isn't exactly a limousine. Anyway, just being pedantic now. As he rolled out his plans for a luxurious cruise liner, Ismay delivered the news that every designer dreaded hearing. Budget cuts. What? Ismay wasn't talking small cuts either. There were significant changes that would later change the shipbuilding standards. They're just making this up now. None of this happened. Ismay was on a tight budget. No, he wasn't. The company was tanking. No, it wasn't. And wanted his monolithic ships out on the water as soon as possible, with little cost as possible. Not really. Andrews argued there would be corners Ismay couldn't cut, such as steel quality and the number of lifeboats. Ismay dismissed his concerns. Little did he know his flippant disregard to quality would end in catastrophe. Garbage. Absolute rubbish. Whoever wrote this should feel ashamed of themselves. They're just making this up and contributing to this, like, decades of misinformation around the Titanic. None of this is true. The way the ordering process worked. Thomas Andrews works over here at Harland and Wolff Shipyard. Bruce Ismay works over here at the White Star Line. The White Star Line and Harland and Wolff had a long working relationship, and the way it always worked was they would confer on the initial designs for the ship, general layout, how many public rooms, how many staterooms, its projected speed and that kind of thing. And then there was essentially like an agreed lump sum that the White Star Line would sign off on. So it's not like down the line they would renege on this and say, hey, you know, we actually signed that check for, you know, 15 million pounds or whatever. We actually can only pay 13, so do you mind if we cut costs around maybe like the steel quality? Do you mind using like less good steel? Just didn't happen. They had already like agreed on a price, and then Harland and Wolff would just deliver the ships when they were ready. And once White Star Line had signed and accepted them after their sea trials, then they were considered delivered. It's just not true. Thomas Andrews joined the Titanic project relatively late. He actually replaced William Peary, who'd been a long-term Harland and Wolff employee and oversaw the majority of Titanic's early design and inception. And Thomas Andrews came on board when a lot of the original layout for the Titanic had already been drafted. Again, just painting Ismay as like this archetypal villain like Hedy Lamarr from Blazing Saddles. Number 4, the National Coal Strike of 1912. Wait, is it Hedy or Hedley? It was Hedley, wasn't it?
It's not Hedy, it's Hedley. Hedley Lamarr.
Sorry, Hedley. Number 4, the National Coal Strike of 1912. Unconcerned with the budget, it was during the completion of the Titanic that the country was under a fierce coal strike. The National Coal Strike of 1912 led hundreds upon thousands of workers to engage in industrial action. Their strike was caused by unfair wages provided by coal shareholders. As stocks plummeted, so did their wages. Wow, some actual history. That's quite a surprise from History 101. But when the stock rose, there was little to no change in compensation. Due to the labour conflicts, the White Star Line was under tremendous pressure, and the pressure mounted. It was because of the coal strike that would affect Ismay's budget plans. The price of coal was on the rise. It didn't impact Ismay's budget plans. This happened when Titanic was basically finished. Number 5, the new evidence. Here we go. This is going to be good. I actually made a video about this on my main channel. This is going to be terrible. I can already tell. It's plausible that the ripple effect of the National Coal Strike of 1912 affected the price of coal. It's possible that the National Coal Strike affected the price of coal. I feel like that's a given. Strikes usually equate to a higher market value of the product, and with Ismay's budget, it spelled disaster. I feel like they're just throwing in stocks, prices, budgets. They're throwing these words at the reader, so they're like, oh wow, they really know what they're talking about. They just have no idea. The 2017 documentary Titanic: The New Evidence and book Titanic: Why She Collided, Why She Sank, Why She Never Should Have Sailed by Senan Maloney suggested that one of the reasons that contributed to the sinking of the Titanic was fuel shortage. This documentary claimed that the only rational explanation to push at full speed into an ice field was because the ship needed to conserve fuel. To slow the ship down only to speed it back up took more coal burning than a ship running at a continuous speed. In other words, the ship was going at top speed because they didn't have enough fuel to slow and then speed up. Budget cuts. It's just garbage. Garbage! It's rubbish. We know exactly how much coal Titanic took on. Coal from other ships was diverted to the Titanic so that should make her maiden voyage. She was fully bunkered and ready to roll, baby. It's just ridiculous, the idea that they didn't have enough coal. Titanic carried heaps of coal in reserve, specifically so that she would never be caught out. Again, it's just garbage, and I often wonder where people get this stuff from. Like, Senan Maloney tells people he's been studying the Titanic for like 30 or 40 years, but what has he been studying to draw these conclusions? Where do you get this information from? Number 6, foreshadow. Unfortunately, the budget cuts did not end there. Think of the Titanic as a banana.
Grab your banana.
A little early in the party for that, don't you think?
I blame James Cameron for this.
Imagine that the bow is going underwater and the stern's being lifted up and you've got a center of buoyancy right here.
You know what? I'm just going to let it go. On the outside, it looks like the thickness... I actually don't know if I can get through this. On the outside, it looks like the thickness of the peel would protect the soft fruit inside.
The ship. So it starts to break at the top.
In reality, it's easy to peel and just as easy to crush. That was the Titanic. Deceptively strong and formidable on the outside, but internally weak and soft. Like a banana.
Banana peel theory.
The proof was in the pudding! Now we're just mixing up our food metaphors. Goodness me. Banana pudding, I assume? When RMS Olympic struck the Royal Navy's HMS Hawke. Not only did the HMS Hawke leave a gaping hole in the ship's bow, it struck at the stern, the opposite end, that's right, that it left cracks beyond the puncture. The steel was substandard. And any engineer looking at the damage could easily tell that faulty metal on a ship is like building Fort Knox out of tissue paper. Really going ham with the metaphors. Or it would have been nice to see some consistency, like building Fort Knox out of tiramisu, building Fort Knox out of chocolate mousse, building Fort Knox out of bananas. It will tear easily. Did Ismay care? Nah. Quality writing. When steelworkers advised Ismay that it's best to use special steel, he responded haughtily and informed the steel company that ordinary steel would suffice. This, however, does not compare to what came next. Again, where are they getting this from? They're just making it up. Oh no! No, there should be no special steel on this ship. We've run out of money.
Student?
Are you kidding?
Number 7. How many of these are there? I don't know if I can get through all of this. Number 7 is ignorance really bliss. Is this luxury ship sounding luxurious to you? No, it sounds like a banana. Somewhere between a banana and a meringue. It sounds horrifying to think that passengers would board a ship without knowing their safety could be jeopardized. What was more shocking is not just the faulty materials that constructed the ship, but what happened inside. In 2017, a photo album was discovered. Here we go. The photo album was discovered. I'm not even going to read it. That has a smudge on it. They say it's the coal fire that was burning in the ship, and it's just not. Just not. The Titanic equivalent of King Tutankhamun's tomb. To be fair, the Titanic equivalent of King Tutankhamun's tomb would probably be the wreck itself. Number 8, a closer look. When Raphael purchased the blah blah blah, he saw a blah blah blah. At first he thought it was glare caused by blah blah blah, I don't care. Upon Raphael doesn't realize it. 30-foot scorch mark, it was the burn created. No, it wasn't. I made a video on this. Just watch it. I'm not even going to go into it. Just rubbish. Number 9, Hellfire. Since the Titanic was a massive ship. Not reading it. Something coal, something fire. Don't care. This is rubbish. Battling the Inferno. 11 men combated, but it wasn't enough. The fire continued to burn. Ismay made sure no one knew. That's right, because Ismay is... luxury lounge on board the Titanic. For those wondering what this actually is, that's it looks like a 19th century liner, so I'm going to say it's I don't think it's German. It's maybe a Cunard or something from the 1800s. Not Titanic. Biting his nails, twirling his moustache, Ismay gambled that his cruise ship, oh, that irritates me so much, would be a phenomenal success. He spared no expense in lavishing the Titanic with luxury interior designs and spacious rooms for the first class. Ismay wanted his potential investors to be impressed by the materialism. It was go big or go home. First class ticket on the Titanic costs money. First class ticket could get you a 3-bedroom suite. Ismay didn't skimp out on his first class meals either. He really knew where his priorities were. This person has such a beef with Bruce Ismay. They're just like making all this stuff up. 13, eating luxury. In 2012, a rare Titanic menu sold for money. On the menu were dishes like foie gras. For dinner, according to Time, the menu served 10 courses. It's safe to say the wealthy were very much taken care of. However, the glamour couldn't cover up what was burning inside the walls beneath the Titanic's deck, and it was coming to a boiling point. Number 14, smoke under the rafters. Okay, big deal, there was a fire. How is that relevant to the ship sinking? As the story goes, an iceberg sunk the ship, not a fire. Truth. Amazing. An iceberg was the main reason why the Titanic sank, but it was only part of a larger, more complex equation. Sinan Maloney thought so too and asked what kind of damage could an internal fire do. Maloney sought out a consultant to answer his question and approached a coal fire specialist, Guillermo Rein, who gave a chilling revelation. His answer, the coal had been on fire days before anyone could find a flame. I don't care about any of this. What could possibly go wrong? Rein reveals to Maloney that the coal might have been on fire for days, if not heated for weeks. Something... That much quantity of coal, the fires can burn between anywhere 1,000 to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The equivalent of molten lava, that melts metal, including steel. It's not true. Without sufficient oxygen into a confined space, like one of Titanic's coal bunkers, the fire would be burning somewhere between 700 degrees with an upper limit of 900 degrees, and it's just not enough to sufficiently weaken or melt steel. Coal fires don't melt steel beams. Number 16, the ninth circle. Let's put everything in perspective, shall we? The fire in the engine room is burning between 1,000 and 2,000 degrees in a metal compartment or a bunker. Beside said bunker is one of the ship's bulkheads, so if the ship took on water, the water would only fill in the designated compartment. Again, they've just taken a random ship and just chucked it in. We'll just, this is like the least glaring error. When fire is hot as the ninth circle of Dante's Inferno, puts continuous heat and pressure on steel, the metal becomes brittle and weak. No longer will it hold upon impact. It was very prone to shattering. The bulkhead that was most affected was not just a dime a dozen, but it was the last stronghold before reaching the boiler room. If the fourth bulkhead leading to the boiler room was damaged, nothing could protect the furnaces. What the fire led to was disastrous. Number 17, warped. When the Titanic left Southampton, the fire was still burning in the coal bunker. However, it was slightly mitigated with a few shovels, manpower. Slightly mitigated. What they mean to say there is put out. The fire was put out. The ship was no longer on fire. It was enough to push back the flames and make repairs. Unfortunately, the fire, still burning, warped the metal around the ship's boiler room's bulkheads. The fire was put out. They told everybody they put it out. It looked like a buckled wave of metal, and between the welding... No welding involved here, folks. It was all riveted. Between the welding seam of the watertight compartment was a breach. A hole. All the crew could do was make a patch repair and cross their fingers that they could get Titanic to port. To their dismay, the breach would promise dire consequences. It's not true. The bulkhead, because of probably the expansion of the coal as it was burning, did have like a little bloop. It was like a little wave, but the seams were real tight and the rivets were still in place. The rivets were stressed to only about 10 or 20% of their failure point, and the ship was in fine condition. And in fact, the guys who were reviewing it, the damage party kind of just painted over it with black oil, as was standard practice, because they checked it and made sure that it was in working order and the ship was not, the structure wasn't compromised. Number 18, running on fumes. I did not expect this to go for so long. The only way the firemen and furnace workers could lessen the coal fire was to shovel away the coal. Where do you move coal? Why, the furnaces, of course. This is my favorite garbage myth. This is awesome. And because it was assumed that the Titanic was low on fuel, feeding the furnaces until the ship was at full speed was a requirement. Stated previously, more coal would slow down or speed up the ship rather than keeping it at a consistent speed. With the furnaces burning hot, the ship was racing across the Atlantic at top speed and straight into an iceberg field. It was only a matter of time before an inevitable disaster struck. So they are contending, as did Sinan Maloney, that the more coal you shovel into the furnaces, the more fast your ship goes. It's just not true. You'll be disappointed to know. That's not based in reality. The steam is generated by the heat. This is true. The steam is maintained at a regular pressure. Burning more coal doesn't necessarily automatically mean you're going to be generating more speed, because if you're creating excess steam and the ship needs to be going a little slower, they can just vent that excess steam. Steam buildup was taken really seriously because it could lead to an explosion. And Titanic's funnels all had pipes that could vent excess steam out. So, truth be told, if the ship's captain felt his ship was, generating too much steam pressure, if again, like this is just not a scenario that would happen, but worst case scenario, they could just vent this steam out. 19, disaster over the horizon. Though there were several warnings of icebergs in close proximity, the crew navigating the ship didn't want to stop in fear of being stranded in the middle of the ocean. Garbage. Rumor has it that the ship's captain, Captain Edward John Smith, was pressured to keep the ship at top speed. With the rate the ship was going, he had two options. The first was to ignore the ice warning and hope that his crew would avoid the towering iceberg, or two, risk slowing and burning through whatever coal reserves Titanic had. Again, garbage. Neither great options, but as they say, the rest is history. 20, down she goes. The chaos finally struck when the Titanic collided with an iceberg. The ship sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes. The 2,200 passengers, 706 people survived. The ship sank quickly. Too quickly. That could very well be a plausible explanation of the fire. The Titanic had its side essentially ripped open and stayed afloat for over 2 hours. That is not a quick sinking. If Titanic had sunk in 14 minutes, you might say so. 2 hours was a long time. It's pretty testament to the ship's design that it didn't capsize or anything like that. This idea that it sank quickly is, again, just rubbish. The iceberg struck the starboard side of the ship. It tore like tissue paper. The water quickly filled the compartments. The water gurgled in, and filled the bow of the ship. Thankfully, the compartments held, however, it wouldn't last. It's just not true. It wasn't ripped like tissue paper. We know that. The rivet seams failed, and water was allowed into the ship in small, very, very small, thin lines where the plating of the ship parted, just under the sheer pressure of 45,000 tons of ship and a couple 100,000 tons of iceberg coming into contact. It's like the immovable object and the unstoppable force. 21 just used duct tape. Again, it's not Titanic. No idea what this ship is here. The fourth compartment groaned under the weight of the Atlantic as it pressed against the brittle and weak steel. No, it didn't. It was the last barrier before the water could reach the engine room. No, it wasn't. The patch held as long as it could. No, it didn't. But like a duct tape bumper, it wasn't meant to ward a significant amount of stress. Not true. And a wash of green and foam. The water breached the last stronghold of the ship's walls and the ocean began to wash through the engine room. No, it didn't. A torrent of ice-cold water flooded the engine room. No, it didn't. And filled the compartment at an alarming rate. According to Maloney, the outcome could have been significantly different. What failed, I think it was about 1:10 a.m., don't quote me on that, was not the watertight bulkhead. That remained in place. It was a smaller bulkhead forward of that. It was a coal bunker bulkhead. It was different. It was plated at 0.3 of an inch thick, not designed to hold water. But the iceberg had just nicked that compartment, so what was typically just designed to hold coal was now filling up with water. And they shut the doors and everything, kept the water in there, but it just wasn't designed to be watertight. And so eventually at 1:10, it was, I think, carrying around 400 to 500 tons of water inside that compartment. The inevitable happened, it just burst open. The watertight bulkhead, it was a lot thicker. I think it was like 0.5 or 0.6 of an inch at its base. That was not going to fail. That thing was tough. So yeah, they've got the watertight bulkhead and the coal bunker bulkhead here confused, which is not surprising at all. Maloney observed that if the bulkhead held, the Titanic could have stayed afloat double the amount of time, which would have been enough time for the Titanic to send out an SOS. The event shocked the world. Oh, come on. Among the survivors was none other than the biggest schmuck of the bunch, J. Bruce Ismay. Ah, man, it's just so poor, you know? This guy, you can accuse Ismay of a lot of things. I think being an enthusiastic, overly excited figure is probably one of them. I mean, he was just a guy who was really, really proud of the ships that his company built and ordered. He didn't, you know, he wasn't twirling his moustache and ordering budget cuts. I mean, it's just such garbage. When Ismay was put on trial, he claimed that all the firemen on the Titanic had perished. A telegram was noted, however, what came next was disturbing. The most tragic event of the century was about to be blown out of proportion. Justice would not be served.
What?
The High Court judge who ruled over the inquiry was Lord Mersey. When presented with evidence that a coal fire was burning, he waved off the evidence as irrelevant and was recorded to have looked impatient and seemed to want to get the investigation over with. Of the 160 firemen hired to embark with Titanic's maiden voyage, only 8 stayed on. They basically looked at the fire, turned and said, nope.
Nope. Was
this written by a 17-year-old? Lord Mersey dismissed the claims. His ruling was infuriating. Not much could have been done. Blah, blah, blah. 25, the verdict. In the end, Lord Mersey closed the case. Oh my goodness, they actually got a photograph of the Titanic. That's Captain Smith's bathtub. I'm shocked. Then the missing photos were discovered upon reading all the evidence he possessed, the fire, the budget cuts, and the events that led to the sinking. What was once the queen of the ocean, Maloney was baffled. He was left to question why such an important detail was ruled out of the sinking. Blah, blah, blah. That's definitely not the Titanic. I still don't care about any of this. The case was still ruled accidental. Blah, blah, blah. The cost of cutting corners. Fearing the White Star would go bankrupt, J. Bruce Ismay risked the lives of over 2,200 men, women, and children for money. He left the ship vulnerable, not just by fire, but by the multiple budget cuts he encouraged. Each cut was like frayed thread on an unraveling sweater. Each cut was like a frayed banana skin on an unraveling banana. Not only did Ismay cut corners with the metal, no he didn't, but he also cut back on the number of lifeboats on board. Every shortcut Ismay took in the construction of the Titanic was exposed, and were all a part of the ship's sinking and tragedy. The ship was doomed from the very beginning. Blah, blah, blah. Many changes have been made in regards to maritime safety, stricter, more rigorous ice patrols, standing crew, lesson learned. They still couldn't get a photo of the Titanic right. They've got the Olympic and then the Olympic again. So of all the photographs, how many of these actually were of the Titanic? One? Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't even call this out earlier. That's obviously not, that's definitely not the Titanic. That's German by the looks of it. German Oceanliner, I'm not sure which. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 10. And the 2 points that I'm giving it are actually for using 6 real photographs of the Titanic. So they did successfully find some photographs of the Titanic and use them, which is quality journalism. As for the rest of it, it's made up. It's not real. None of this is real. Anyway, I don't really know what this was meant to be. I thought it would be more fun, but now I'm just mad. Listen, if you want me to rip apart any more garbage articles about the Titanic or ships, send them to me at... Well, don't email them to me, just put them in the comments of this video, and I'll maybe do one in the future, because this was fun, even though the quality of the article almost made me cry a couple of times. Tell me what you thought. If you think this article was good, then leave a comment, and good luck in the comments. If you thought I was unjust or unfair, let me know. As always, stay safe, stay happy, and just be careful what you read out there. It's just terrible.
Banana.